elect the clerk to call the proprietors of Plot 6 Entebbe Road, and also because it was been, I think, I don't know whether it's a coincidence, but most of the properties where the government has compensated, we are seeing a lot of involvement of Custodian and Kampala advocates. I think it's prudent to invite the proprietors of Custodian and Kampala advocates to appear before this committee to shed light on this property on 26 March 2020. Next.
Next, Honourable Chair, is Plot 21, Makerere Road. This property, according to our records, it doesn't show any repossession process effected. The property was gazetted for disposal in 1995. This property is still unclaimed, and the MS Gateway Bus Services Limited should they are illegally in occupancy. Which plot is that? Plot 21 Makerere Road.
Members, I think let's go back to Plot 6 Entebbe Road. So I think on the issue of inviting the Custodian and Kampala advocates, I think the law protects them in the course of their duties and being as an advocate. So we don't want to indulge into that situation, but we should invite the proprietors of Plot 6 Entebbe Road to come with a relevant document to support the position cause why their certificate should not be cancelled, because the property, according to records we have, it was compensated by the government of Uganda.
Mr. Chairman, Honourable Chairman.
Yeah.
On that specific point, I wish to note that on our part, we try to approach the proprietor and try to understand he died or is not in Uganda at least. But the current occupant and manager is here and not an easy person, because we wanted to verify how he got to our place to do a renewal and a freehold.
He's not an easy person.
Yes, even the Custodian board applied to approach him.
Honorable Chair, in fact, at the chairman, they are so elusive, because one time you gave us the shades, we moved there, we almost camped there for 8 hours, but was not able to access these people. Then what I gathered is that there are papers flying around there purporting to represent the client in court over the same property, unknown client. And I think the whole matter is very tricky, Honorable Chair. We need to divide it.
My view, Honorable Chair, and members on this matter is that, one, having realized that whatever was entered in error, I had always told the clerk to invite the Commissioner Land Registry, because we keep wasting time every now and then. Because if the Commissioner Land Registry is here, and we've done all necessary steps, like you've had one, inviting the party, and the party is elusive to be heard, or the party has been invited to be heard, then an effective instruction would be given to the effect that whatever was entered in error, or that the Commissioner Land Registry invites that party, and if they don't appear based on the facts that we have, it automatically collapses and it would be cancelled. So there would be no argument as to whether you're meeting him or not, because the subject matter would be consequently cancelled. So yesterday we realized that Raful Patel was one of the people. Plot 6, didn't you realize it's one of them, where he acquired certificates in his list yesterday, certificates of repossession, which he denied himself. So
the whole process is quite wanting, but in the absence of the Commissioner Land Registrar of Title, then you have no headway. So if these ones have called him and these ones have called him and he cannot appear, the ball lies in the hands of the Commissioner to cancel the title. That's it, because the original title is there.
Members, I think based on the explanation of the Legal Council and members of Kampala District Land Board, to solve this matter, I'll direct the clerk to invite the current proprietors of the said property, Plot 6 Centenary Road, and also the Commissioner Land Registry and the Minister for Lands to appear before this committee on 26 March so that we can solve that matter. Next.
Honorable Chair, next is Plot 7 Port Avenue.
Plot 21.
21 Makerere Road. According to our records, this is a property which was never repossessed. The property was gazetted for disposal in 1995. The property is still unclaimed, and MS Gateway Bus Services Limited is illegally in occupancy. And the property, according to our records from the Vesture Committee, it is among the listed properties to be disposed of by the Minister in accordance with the law.
Custodian, Kampala District Land Board.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I think I agree with the position laid by the Executive Director of the Custodian Board, and I wish to add that the ownership of Gateway Bus Services is a nullity in law because this property was not built to. So they should provide the information how they got registered without, because this one did not go through us. They just had their names entered by the Register of Titles. We have never dealt with the Gateway. Actually, there are only 2 papers on file. So
I think members on Plot 21 Makerere Road, I direct the clerk to invite the owners of Gateway Bus Services who are in occupants of this property.
is it my land?
In occupants of this property to appear before this committee on 26 March to defend their title. Next.
But it most likely it's even my land.
Okay. Let them come and tell us how they get into that. Let's proceed.
Honorable Chair, Plot 7 Port Avenue, you can cancel that end. Actually, it was repossessed out of time, 1996. It got released when it was still subsisting. There are 2 titles on the property, and it is the current management is under Amalgamated Property Services Limited, allegedly on behalf of Surrender Investment Limited. There is a need to establish whether Surrender Investment Limited exists and their legal nexus touching the property.
Lead Council.
maybe you have to explain to this honorable committee the effect that in 1996 there was no more repossession. What is your basis?
Honorable Chair and honorable members, there was an ultimatum by the Honorable Minister of Finance then, and he gave 3 months, and to that effect, the 3 months were only running up to 30th October 1993. So that was the cut-off date of repossession.
So in effect, every repossession beyond 93 is a nullity?
According to the law, unless I'm hearing Mama Ju trying to explain, unless she has any institutional memory to the contrary.
You must go to the law.
Mama Ju, the law is that one.
Honorable Chair, thank you. Cut-off date for repossession was 30th October 1993, but some bits of repossession continued. The repossessor had to apply to the minister and pay some fee. If the minister authorized, then the Vestiaire Committee will be asked to process the repossession. So it should not shock us when we find that we've been having repossession after 1993.
Under what law?
I don't know, but there was the minister gave authority. As per the law, the Expropriated Properties Act says the minister had all the powers.
Yes, it's true. The minister has gotten powers, but that authority can be granted only through a statutory instrument.
Okay.
So, can you quote that statutory instrument?
Honorable Chair, I cannot quote that statutory
Because
instrument.
when you issue a statutory instrument, you issue a form prescribed under which one can repossess beyond that time. Now, you should quote, because yes, the law gives the minister the powers to prescribe fees and form for repossession. The issue is we are asking you to cite that law. If you don't, then it's a nullity. You either have that law or not. A mere word from a minister is not law.
Members, based on that, I think it is prudent also to listen to the proprietors of this property. I therefore direct the clerk to invite the proprietors of Plot 7, Porto Avenue, to appear before this committee on 26 March to defend their title. Next.
Actually, I can help in effecting service.
Okay, sir.
Because that's where there are those new apartments.
Okay.
So,
clerk, you get in touch with the Kampala District Land Board in serving the said proprietors of the mentioned properties, because being that they're in Kampala, they're handling Kampala properties, they know their address. Thank you. Next.
Next one I will share is Plot 21, Namirembe Road. It is among the 136 properties to be valued for sale, and it's not gazetted. This property was never repossessed, and the property was mortgaged in the bank, allegedly occupied by Haruna Sentongo and the Chibondo Hamis.
Custodian, Kampala District Land Board.
we gave a narrative last time around, but the response by the Custodian Board appears to be the position of the law. I don't know how we dealt with this. I think I've never renewed. The release of 94 years and 8 months is still running. That's what appears in our records. That's now transferred several times. So I would advise that maybe we invite the current owners to explain.
So please have the current owner.
We have never dealt with this property at all, apart from just having a record of transfers, which I think we accessed from the Ministry of Land.
So who are the current owners according to
According to the records, we have security transporters and distributors. But according to Custodian Board, it is Haruna Sentongo and Hamis Chikungu.
So,
But this information is got from Ministry of Lands. We have never dealt with this property at all.
so
In effect, Mr. Chairman, the question goes to now Custodian Board. How do you still have the title, the original title? Because you see, that is the basis, that in your records you have the original title.
Honorable Chair, we don't have the original title.
Where is it?
It is in the bank.
It is in the bank. No, the special certificate of title is what you say is in the bank.
No,
Where is
the original.
the original certificate
Yes.
of title?
Yes,
Is among
it was mortgaged
It was mortgaged by who?
by the former proprietors.
From our proprietors.
Yes.
And it was not redeemed by
No. And according to the law, it was incumbent upon all the financial institutions to declare to the board all those properties that were mortgaged and fell under the ambit of the Expropriated Properties Act.
members, basing on the two narratives of Kampala District Land Board and Custodian Board, I think to resolve this matter, we need the two parties to appear so that they can show cause why their title should not be cancelled. I therefore direct the clerk to invite the Trinity Transporters and Distributors Company Limited and those that sold to, that is Haruna Sentongo and Kigundu Amisi, to appear before this committee on 26 March to show cause why their title should not be cancelled and to tell us how they came into possession of the government property. Next.
Next, Honorable Chair, is the plot 1, Dewington Road. Honorable Chair, the occupants of this property received the compensation through British Commission for stock. This property was repossessed in 1993 under certificate 1450, and the certificate of repossession was collected by Regendra Mashur of care of Mamutaz Kasam on 14th June 1993 without any doubt of legal nexus, and MS Kasam Mamutaz collects rent from it. But on top of this, when you check on our records, this is a property which was owned by more than one. And we wonder what instrument and what powers Mamutaz Kasam used then, and which instruments or powers she's using currently to deal with this property.
Mamutaz Kasam must appear in person to give these responses like you ruled earlier on, because this is a case we met in London. The families that were there are two, and they are still in conflict even as families, but on evidence, and it was fully recorded, it's clear that they never gave her any powers of attorney. It was an ordinary handwritten letter by one of the people that did not even qualify to be the executrix of the will by then. So she has to come and appear and state how she acquired that certificate.
Members, due to the fact that we are supposed to interact with Dr. Mamutaz, and over other properties, which this property plot 1 the Winton Road is part. I pray that we should stay this until we interact with the Dr. Montas based on other properties we submitted, so that we can resolve that matter. Next.
Honorable Chair, plot 6870 Kira Road. This is a property. This property is among the compensated properties through UNHCR, and it has been severally transferred, and it has been converted from lease to freehold.
Kampala District Land Board. The property was compensated. That means it was a government property. We went ahead to give the consent for conversion from lease to freehold, even to deny the little revenue which the government was collecting from its own property. Thank you.
Honorable Chair, we, on the face of it, apart from the conversion, we did not deal with the transfer from Ugandan Commission to Mohamudu owners. That was done at the Ministry of Lands, because the lease was on full term. But we're looking out for papers of the basis of the conversion, because one has to be a Ugandan. I don't know. There's nothing on file. Otherwise, technically, the position as laid down by the Executive Secretary is the position of the law. Whatever transactions effected were nullity.
Information Chair. Actually, according to the Uganda Gazette, this Rajabai or Razanhaji is jail. By then, he was compensated, but his citizenship is clearly showing that he was a Ugandan, whereas he was a Ugandan. After being compensated, he was obliged to go through the process of having this property either through sale, through purchase, or paying back, refunding the money that he was given in compensation, or as the law could split at that time.
Basing on the narrative of both agencies, I direct the clerk to invite the proprietors of plots 60 to 70 Kira Road and the Commissioner Land Registry to come and give us more on that, on that property, so that we can sort that one out. Next.
Next, Honorable Chair, is plot 14 Nakivu Road.
Proceed.
Honorable Chair, I beg to make one correction. Actually, this property was repossessed in 1988, and the certificate number 0451 was issued. It is now under Karim Herji, from Karim Herji later to Gasta Rule in 1995. We cancel this other narrative. Actually, as of now, we don't have any claim unless there is any other complaint.
So
That is afresh.
that one is right. It was repossessed rightly and it was dealt in rightly.
As of now. Unless there are third party claims.
There's something here. We want to see what is on record during the repossession, because this property was held in half shares. Do you realize? Are we on the same page?
Yes.
And the requirement was that the person who was authorized to pick this repossession certificate should have had authority from all those people whose interests in share appeared. Do you have that?
Actually, we don't have that.
Assuming we asked for the other book where people signed it, do you have that on record? Mr. Biakatonda, look at your book. You had a book yesterday.
Actually, Honorable Chair, I don't remember what the Honorable Council is raising. This property was owned by two people, Babai Shanari and Zera Jaraji Maji. So there is need for further verification how these shares were repossessed and how they have been transferred to that effect.
Therefore, there is a need to invite because of the two narratives, the Custodian Board and Kampala District Land Board. The property was owned in tenancy in common, but we don't have a proof as to both parties. They gave power of attorney to those who picked the certificate. I therefore direct the clerk to call the proprietors of the current proprietor of plot 1494 Road. According to the facts, it seems to be Gas Relay, to appear before this committee on 26 March to show cause as to why his certificate should not be cancelled. Next.
Next is plot 6, Prince Anna Drive. 15 was a repetition. We go to number 16. 15 is a repetition.
Okay, proceed.
So I beg through you, Chair, we go to number 16, which is plot 6, Prince Anna Drive. Honorable Chair and members, our records clearly show that this property was compensated for by government. The current occupant is Mutabazi Francis, but the compensation was received through UNHCR. The matter was forwarded for investigation by the Land Protection Unit of the Uganda Police.
Kampala District Land Board.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. This property has a running lease of 94 years and 2 months, effective 1st July 1964. I've never dealt with this property, and all transactions on the property being carried on by the land registry. So we have nothing much useful to say. Honorable Chair, we have nothing much useful to say because we have never had any interaction with even the proprietors.
Based on the two narratives, I think there is a problem on this property, and to resolve it, we need to have an interface with the current proprietor of this property. I therefore direct the clerk to invite the current proprietor of this property and the commissioner land registry, because based on our investigation, the property was transferred to according to the facts, the property seems to have been transferred to Pius Bigirimana. So to Mr. Pius Bigirimana. So I direct the clerk to write to both Mutava Francis and Pius Bigirimana to appear before this committee on 26 to show cause why their title should not be cancelled. Next.
Honorable Chair, next is plot 35 Nakimbo Road. This property was repossessed in 1992 under certificate number 1106. What is a miracle is that on the day the certificate of repossession was issued, that was the day when this property was transferred. The day the certificate was issued, till the same day this property was transferred to the second party. And the law provided that the minister had to consent if the transfer is to be effected before the expiry of 5 days. I mean 5 years.
Transferred to who? Who are the current owners?
There are very many, but we need to verify. But what the subject matter was
transferred to who?
There is Rashan Dano Yusuf. On the same day, you can check, whenever chair we check in the narrative of Kampala District Board. Because the certificate number 11 was dated the 16th April 1992 under section 45 of the Expropriate Properties Act 1982. On the same day, the entry of Roshan Ban Yusuf Warji, then Rizwabu Yusuf Warji, Muhammad Yusuf Warji, Nassim Mustafa Warji, Nizam Yusuf Warji was entered.
Mr. Chairman, of course, there is no express law that says when you get a repossession certificate you cannot transfer. That you cannot transfer on the same day.
Yes, and the Expropriated Properties Act. And the Expropriated Properties Act.
needs further studying, Mr. Chairman, and in the meantime we shall request our clerk to look into it, and if the law is found wanting on their side, they should be invited to explain this scenario. But section 7 that you quoted, is it 7? 8. Any property or business transferred to a joint venture company or to the former owner under this section shall not be sold or otherwise disposed of without written consent of the minister until 5 years from the date of transfer. The law as it is, restriction on sale, the law as it is definitely is not on the side of these persons or these individuals unless they produce the evidence that they have the consent of the minister. Maybe you have
Mr. Chairman, it appears that these are beneficiaries of the estate or administrators. So I think when they got the repossession, they immediately affected their names as either administrators or the estate, not even them. So I think that was not a transfer envisaged under the section.
It wasn't a sale in that.
It was not a sale or disposal. They are actually coming in to manage as coming in the shoes of the deceased proprietor. That's why actually they put their dates of birth.
My only problem with this, which I think we need to verify it further, because we have a complaint from the son of Habib Warich. In fact, he was complaining against Dr. Mamtaz that they did repossess their properties without their consent. So
the property is now converted. We have invited Mr. Chitandwe. We have invited Mr. Chitandwe, the shareholder of Mariana Agencies, to supply us with the repossession certificate. There is no repossession on
next.
Next is plot 23, Clementi Road. Honorable Chair, this property was never repossessed. The property is now converted. We have invited Mr. Chitandwe. We have invited Mr. Chitandwe, the shareholder of Mariana Agencies, to supply us with the repossession certificate. There is no repossession on
next.
Next is plot 23, Clementi Road. Honorable Chair, this property was never repossessed. That on the pretext that the claimants never left the country, there is need to bring proof, evidence to prove that they never went outside, they never left the country, and all this was under the guidance of Ms. Namian Berosa Rijo. And on our record, this is the property which was listed among those that the owners were occupying. And according to our record, it never fell under the ambits of the Expected Properties Act because the owner was in possession. Allegedly was in possession.
So what is the effect of your narrative?
Actually, you already ruled on that.
On this?
Yes. When they came here.
Yeah, they came here.
Yeah.
Well, those are the Indian party. Those ones, they came with some evidence. We ruled on that. Next.
Next is plot 7 Wilson Street. Honorable Chair, this is a property that was compensated through UNHCR, but in turn, the proprietors turned around and repossessed in 1985 under certificate 02/26. The property was not gazetted. More information is needed regarding the occupation of this property, and it was converted from freehold from leasehold to freehold.
Under which circumstances? Because if you say the proprietors were compensated, that means they used the prudent way of acquiring this property. District Landlord?
We are seeking for guidance from maybe the council. There is an instrument on title entered on 27th April 1961. This property was surrendered to His Excellency the Governor of Uganda Protectorate with effect from 31st December 1960. Is it 1960? Yes.
Can we have, do you have that copy within the files?
Yes, we did something. So in other words, it was not subject to even repossession towards property. So the government,
it was a government property. That means the Land Commission can deal with it. Isn't it the one which
so even the compensation was also in air, because it was already surrendered to the government in 1960, way before they departed.
So if the owners would be here, I would request for them to return the compensation.
But now it is on our chair. It is still property of the government.
So why is this one saying that you
was not gazetted?
Custodian board?
And who repossessed the government property?
Who is in possession of this government?
Actually, on record, it is being reflected that somebody repossessed it.
Honorable Chairman, that is a very big question.
So, I think we will not waste a lot of time on this. We are directing Custodian board.
Chairman, I think, I don't know, you want to give guidance. I think now that a mistake has been going on, people are in possession of properties which are supposed to be under the control of Custodian board. I think the moment they leave there, they should go and take over.
It's just simple.
People are still enjoying and entering into transactions and fleecing tenants.
The question is, this can't even be a land court issue. The question is you're the custodians of this property. Who is in possession? Tell us.
What?
Honorable Chair, it is under, it is the property that was Bachan Singh Chima. This is LRV 508, 406, plot 7, Wilson Road, and it also including half the sanitary lane between plot 5.
But we need to know that one. We need to know who repossessed, because we are looking of this certificate.
The one who repossessed is Bachan Singh Chima.
You see, in your books of repossession, we find someone that the name of who picked the certificate of repossession, because we need to know. Because this is, according to the records which is on the file of Kampala District Land Board, and this is a government property.
Can you
not based on not vested on Custodian board, according to the records.
Mr. Chairman, my view is we stand off until he tells us who picked that repossession certificate.
So we stand off at this property.
Let them bring that in.
Let them bring the evidence as to who really picked this property, plot 7 Wilson Street.
And immediately evict them.
Yes.
Do something. It's your responsibility. Don't just throw hands in the air.
Next.
Next is plot 9 Bugorov Street. This is one of the properties that were compensated. The current occupant is Sophie Susan N. Kasuja and Aziz K. Kasuja. There is need to extract certified copies from Ministry of Lands to fill the gaps. All parties involved should be investigated.
I think last time we talked about this and we had directed the clerk to invite the National Housing Corporation and the Commissioner of Land Registry to come and shed light how this property was transferred to Susan N. Kasuja and Aziz Kasuja. Moreover, it was a compensated property, which shows that that property is for the government property. So I direct the clerk to invite those following people: National Housing.
Before you, sorry,
Proceed.
yeah, at least I have a fair background, historical memory about this property. These properties were properties for National Housing Corporation. Then I was the bank secretary of Greenland Bank. Aziz Kasuja took a loan, which actually paid even after the closure of the bank, painstakingly. He bought this property from National Housing. Most of the properties around Bugolobi and Bandares, government was selling off government houses, full houses. And it was entered into the names of Hajat Sophie and Hajat Aziz. So this property really was government property and it duly paid. The narrative that it was compensated and not repossessed, that's not true, because National Housing had a title. So I can really volunteer to supply. Hajat Susan Sophie has no knowledge at all. She's just an occupant. Unfortunately, Hajat Aziz died. But I don't know if I can be a witness or I can really help to extract information about this. I really know this property and many other properties of Senior Greenland Bank.
According to you, you can be a witness on that, but for the case of the committee, because we are investigating the custodian board properties, and according to records, we are saying this was the custodian board property, which was even compensated by the government. So we shall need to interact with
National Housing should come.
the National Housing Corporation and the Commissioner Land Registry, so that we can get to know how they repossess this property, and so that's the final, the occupants or the current proprietor should not be affected. I therefore direct the clerk to invite the National Housing Corporation on the matter touching plot 9, Bugolobi Street, and the Land Commissioner, Land Registry, to appear before this committee on 26 March.
And Hajat Sophie.
And the current occupants, Hajat, do we need to invite the current occupants? No. At this time, no. Next.
Next one of share is plot 33 William Street. This is a property which was repossessed in 1992 by a letter of repossession, which clearly shows that the process of repossession was never complete. There is no certificate of repossession on file. It was later converted from lease to freehold in 2012. There is no way how the repossession could have been taken.
Wondering how we dealt with it, but it's now converted to a freehold. So I think
It is currently owned by
Mariana Agency. So I think
based on the two narratives, I direct the clerk to invite the directors
you can give us later. We can
of Mariana Agencies Limited and the Commissioner Land Registry on that property plot 33 William Street to give us to show cause why that property, their title should not be cancelled. Next.
Next one of share is plot 7 Tagore Crescent. This property was repossessed in 1992 under certificate number code 1 and claimed by any care area without any daughter of authority. The property was transferred to other persons before the expiry of the 5 years without the consent of the minister.
Based on the true narrative and the principle of fair hearing, I'd like the clerk to invite Mr. N.K. Radia on the issue on that to show cause on this property, Plot 7 Tagore Crescent, as to why his title should not be cancelled. To appear before this committee on 26 March 2020. Next.
Next, Honorable Chair, is Plot 162 Mulago Road. It is one of the redeemed properties, Honorable Chair and members. It is on mile ownership. Since we are with the land title, whether the mile owner has to pay the reversionary interest or be allocated for the pending years. It is one of the redeemed. Okay, that is.
So it is still under Custodian board. I think that is also property 165. Do you have the title? Do you still have the title with you?
Yes, Honorable Chair.
Then property Plot 24 Colorado Hill Drive. Do you still have the title with you?
No, Honorable Chair.
It was advertised for sale.
It was advertised for sale.
So the current occupant is Karim Hilich.
Yes.
How did he get into possession?
He entered the occupation without any color or authority from Custodian board, not from an authority. So his occupancy is questionable.
So I direct the clerk to invite Mr. Karim Hilich to show cause on Plot 24 Colorado Hill, how we occupied it, and to the committee so that we can have an informed decision. Members, today being that it's a Friday and it's all about that one is honorable members concern, but we feel most of the members here they want to go and attend the prayers. So I'm left with no chance apart from adjourning this meeting to 26 March 2020 at 10 a.m. so that we can proceed with this matter. Thank you. Yeah, we shall proceed from where we stopped. That is Plot Party 25, that is Plot 24, Colorado Hill Drive. Thank you. But clerk, you should make sure you inform those people they appear on that day. And you should tell, if they don't appear, we shall not call them the next time. Besides, we shall go with the narrative of both entities which they have put across to revert those properties back to the government. I think I've forgotten. On 26, I would like the Kampala District Land Board and Custodian Board to give us the status of Plot 52, 54, Benitwanka Street, Plot 77, 7th Street, then Plot 14, 3rd Street, 14 Bentuanuka, that one will have the narrative of it. Then we need plot 14, 3rd Street, plot 52/54, Bentuanuka Street, plot 77, that is 1st Street. No, it's near this plot, which is, what is that street where there is this, that 1st Street, yeah, plot 77, 1st Street. Yeah? What? Governor, yes, that 1st Street. So, and plot 92, Mbuya. Yeah. So on 26 we need a narrative of the status quo of those properties. Do you have?
Last time around, Mr. Chairman, I also forgot I was supposed to give a report on plot 14, Rashid Kanisi and the entire file. So we only have a copy.
So it's not because we had added.
Okay, we'll see next time.
You will provide it on 26. Thank you.
Yes.